I'm the clinical specialist from Sensing Future. I'm very happy to be here again with you. And today is even a more special day because it's the day that we can share with you our new release, our new system that we have been developing. So after
Okay,
years,
so I think we can get started.
listening and researching and working side by side with clinicians, we are very proud now to be able to introduce this new system that we call the Autoneuro system. So, as the name suggests, it is designed for all professionals that work in vestibular rehabilitation, and with one purpose is to make the assessment and treatment more structured and more efficient, and also closer to the real struggles of clinical needs. We know that this is a very complex field, so we took that into account when we developed this. So for the past 13 years, we have worked exclusively in the field of balance, and today all that experience, and we are also very happy to be able to count with direct feedbacks and knowledge from our close friends that already use our systems, and so all of that comes together, and this is what what we came up. So Autoneuro system. I will. This presentation is not going to be very into depth into the theory, but I want you to just get a superficial look, but I want to go through the major points of the system itself. So the first thing to say is that this is a system that integrates into only one software, so into only one system, a high precision posturography plate with a headset with an inertial sensor and a virtual reality headset. So all of this is fully integrated and is used for both evaluation and for the rehabilitation process. So always guided, of course, by the scientific evidence that supports the tests and the use of the technology. So regarding the setup, the complete setup, we have designed it to have two working stations. So we have the health professional working station that you can see now, which is composed by a medical cart with the computer desktop, a monitor, and where the health professionals can control the software. It also has the space to put the virtual reality headset and inertial sensor to be ready to be used when it's needed. And then we have the patient station that is composed by the posturography plate, with the safety bars that are automatic. So because we are working with patients that have balance deficits, so safety comes first. So we have the bars and a big monitor that is the patient's monitor. So I'm going a bit ahead of myself, but I also want to start by saying this, that we thought about the need of for the visual stimulus and all the exercises that use that kind of visual stimulus that are used in vestibular rehabilitation to be possible to be displayed both on the virtual reality headset and on the second monitor. This is because there's some patients that do not tolerate well virtual reality. It's not for everyone, and so there's the flexibility to choose between the two technologies, and it's up to the health professionals to assess and see which one would be more adequate for that patient. So With this launch, we are bringing to life our mission that is thinking about everyone in the world who suffers from balance disorders. We want to be part of the science behind the improvement of the quality of care and for the rehabilitation of these patients. And so we are very happy to count also on you, on our users, the clinicians, researchers, and partners to really help us take this mission further. So let's start. Before we go into the software itself, I wanted also to show you a workflow that we designed to make it easier to go through the software. So everything starts with a patient. So we receive the patient and we need to add a patient to the patient list. So it gets its own folder, and everything we do with the patient gets stored on the patient's folder. So we had a patient and we are ready to start assessing or doing exercises with the patient. So we had a patient, we go to the evaluation. The evaluation model is now organized into categories. Each category contains different protocols, assessment protocols that allow for a functional and organized assessment process of the main contributors of balance control. So we are going to have a balance assessment category. We're going to have the vestibular ocular reflex assessment category, visual-vestibular interaction assessment category, a cervical proprioception assessment category, and then a questionnaire category with 2 questionnaires included. Okay, so we move to the categories, we choose the right assessment protocols, and now we have our first data, our baseline data that because we are using technology, and this is something that comes with an advantage, is that we have more precision to measure, and it's going to be helpful in terms of identifying functional deficits and making clinical decisions, and also to then go to the intervention, to the exercises, and be able to go target the deficits that were identified with more precision on the evaluation, and use the data for the evaluation to parameterize each exercise to really fit the needs of that patient. So we go to the exercise menu, which is also organized into categories. And this is also it's very easy to go from the assessment to the exercise because the categories match each other. So we have the balance assessment categories, and then we have the balance exercises categories. We have the cervical proprioception category for assessment. Then we have the exercises category for cervical proprioception training. We have the vestibular ocular reflex assessment category. Then we have the VOR and oculomotor exercises category, and the habituation exercises that are going to be used and in accordance also to the assessment, for example, in the visual vestibular interaction. So I will go through each category so you will understand it better. So we go to the rehabilitation exercises and games, and every time we reassess, we get a progress report that enables us to measure and monitor closely the progress of the patient. And if we are still in the middle of the intervention, we can adjust the intervention according to the data of the progress report and keep going. Or if we are approaching the end of the intervention, we have a way to measure the intervention results, which is also something that is very important for us, for the patient, and also for us as health professionals. Okay, so let's start. I want to show you now the categories one by one. The first category that we have here is the vestibular ocular reflex assessment category. So as the name suggests, this category, the aim is to perform a functional assessment of the vestibular ocular reflex. So it is a functional assessment. It's not a diagnostic tool. The tests we have do not measure the VOR gain. They measure the loss of visual acuity during head movement. So how the patient can perceive an autotype that appears on the screen when moving the head in different planes of movement and at different velocities. And we are measuring the loss of visual acuity. So we have the three tests. The first test is the perception time test, which it's a preparatory test. So we need to perform this first to be able to measure the static visual acuity, so we can then assess the loss when we had the movement, and also to know the minimum perception time that is also used for the other two protocols. Then we have the dynamic visual acuity test and the gaze stabilization test. These two use the inertial sensor headset, which is now the first time that we are showing it. The patient needs to be seated in front of the screen with inertial sensor on the head. We calibrate the inertial sensor, and then we can go and perform the test. The dynamic visual acuity test, they are similar in terms of what we want to assess in a functional way, but the results, the parameters and interpretation, it's a bit different. So the dynamic visual acuity test determines the loss of visual acuity during specific head movements at specific velocities. Specific velocity levels. So we need to choose at which velocity we want to conduct the study, and then we measure the loss. Okay. The gaze stabilization test is going to determine the maximum velocity of head movement just before the visual acuity drops. So normally the dynamic visual acuity test is more frequently used. And in terms of normality, we know that healthy individuals who have no complaints of oscillopsia have just a small loss of visual acuity up to 0.2 to 0.3 logmar of loss, which is the scale, a unity scale. And they should show similar performances in all directions. So for the patients who complain of oscillopsia, who have VOR impairments, this test is very helpful because it's going to let us know at which frequencies, at which velocities the loss is more significant, and which sides, in which movements this is also more significant. So we can then use this information to choose the right movements and velocities to work with the patient. Okay, so for training VOR. So this is the first category. Then we move to the visual-vestibular interaction category. So this category is composed by one test. We called it the optokinetic test. This test assesses the brain ability to combine a conflictive visual stimulus that is given by the optokinetic bars with the vestibular information to maintain spatial orientation and postural control. And we do this by measuring the postural sway in this visually conflicted environments. So we have 5 test conditions. So we need the posturography plate for this, and we can choose to use to display the optokinetics with individual reality headset or with the monitor. So again, you have this freedom to choose between technologies. And we go through 5 conditions. The first condition is going to be a control condition of normal sensory conditions. And then the second condition, we are going to have the bars moving left to right, the third right to left, up, down, and down, up. Okay, so this is the results we get are related to the balance response. So we are going to assess the main velocity and the center of pressure displacement in each one of the conditions to see what are the conditions that have a higher cost and how much of that, how much is this cost on balance response. Okay, so I have a video here of my colleague doing the test. Of course, the optokinetic stimulation bars, is introducing this conflictive visual stimuli. And as a response, people without any problems can have an adaptive body sway, so it's visible and it's normal. However, if there is a disproportionate increase in postural sway, this can be a sign of a higher reliance on the visual information and the inability to reweight the systems and rely less on the visual information and listen more to the vestibular information and the somatosensory information. So this is good information for us to have, because we can then orientate the intervention to include exercises that can work on sensory integration, such as the habituation exercises. It's like doing a recalibration of the brain. Okay. Moving to the cervical proprioception assessment category. So neck afferent information is also vital for postural orientation. And we know that for some patients, such as in traumatic brain injuries or in cervicogenic dizziness, this distorted neck afferent information can heavily contribute to symptoms of postural disorientation. So it makes sense to consider this as part of the assessment, at least for this type of patients. So this category is composed by the cervical joint position error test. And for this test, we need to use again the inertial sensor and the monitor to assess the patient's ability to relocate their heads to a neutral position after doing active head movement with the eyes closed. I'm going to show you a video when it's easier to understand, to see it. So we are going to have the patient in front of the monitor with the inertial sensor on. We calibrate the sensor so it matches the neutral position, the initial position for each movement. And we assess 4 movements. We assess left rotation, right rotation, extension, and flexion. Each movement, we are going to do 3 trials. We are going to ask the patient to close the eyes and rotate the head to the left until it's comfortable for the patient to go, so there's no need to force anything, and then go back to the neutral position. And when the patient feels like they are on the neutral position, they will let us know, and we validate that position on the software. So we repeat, we do 3 times, 3 trials for each condition, and the alteration is measured as the angular difference between the neutral, the target position, and the position at which the patient reposition their head and perceive it to be on the right neutral position. So it's a test that has a very good level of evidence. And so a positive test holds significant clinical relevance, indicating changes in cervical proprioception. So movement movement sense and position sense. In general, and specifically for cervical genic dizziness patients, an error greater than 4.5 degrees in head repositioning suggests a deficit and is consistently associated with impairments in balance control. So this is why it's also a test that is worth applying if the patient has complaints that match this type of situations. Yeah. Moving to the balance assessment category. So as again, the name suggests, is the category where you can find the balance assessment protocols. We have 8 protocols. For this, you need the posturography plate, and for 2 protocols, the limits of stability and the rhythmic weight shift, the patient needs to be facing the monitor, because there's going to be some interaction with the test via visual biofeedback. So for this context, the modified CAT-SIB and the limits of stability are very useful for assessing and for planning the intervention. So the modified CAT-SIB is a static balance that assesses balancing for different sensory conditions. So this allows us to identify how a person uses or struggles to use the sensory information to maintain balance and where compensation might be happening. So this information is very important to guide the intervention process, especially regarding the right sensory stimulus that we want to use during the balance training. So doing this and then doing, for example, the visual-vestibular interaction assessment protocol, it's like going with a magnifying lens into sensory integration, and then being able to, with more confidence, choose the right exercises and the right sensory stimulus. Okay. The limits of stability. It's, for me, I'm a physiotherapist, so it's my favorite one, because it's a very functional assessment of balance. We want to assess how much a patient can displace the center of mass towards the limits of the base of support. And not only how far, but also how well and how safe is the patient able to perform this movement. So at the end, we have the measurement of the area of stability and control of the movement, which is going to be very helpful for parameterizing the exercises also in balance training. Having this information is very important, as I said, in a functional context, because this is most daily life activities often push the limits of stability, and so we know that having a bigger area of stability is like having a larger margin of error to be able to control the center of mass without losing balance or without having to change the base of support. Okay. To finish the assessment category, we have the questionnaire. So we have 2 questionnaires in here. We have the Dizziness Handicap Inventory, which is a validated clinical tool that is designed to assess the self-perceived impact of dizziness in daily life. So it's a very important that even though we are using technology, that we do not forget about the perception of the patient, of their own symptoms, on their own daily lives. So it's important to do it as a baseline, and also to consider this as part of the reassessment and analyze it side by side with the rest of the assessment tests that we want to do with the patient. And then we have a clinical history questionnaire that is designed to collect information about the patient's health, with a particular focus on symptoms that can be more related to balance disorder. So we have everything in one software. So this is the assessment. We move to the exercises, and again, as I showed you before, we have the categories again for training. So we have the balance exercises category, habituation exercises category, cervical proprioception exercises category, and then the VOR and oculomotor exercises category. So each category is then composed by subcategories with different exercises. We have the description of the categories and subcategories with also the therapeutic goals for each one, so it's easier to understand. So the balance category is composed by 5 subcategories of exercises: postural alignment, weight transferability, directional control, increasing the limits of stability. So each group includes exercises with different levels of difficulty, and they are very, very parameterizable. So performing the limits of stability and collecting the data from the limits of stability, we can then come to the exercises and choose the parameters to match the patient's level. So we can make the exercise a challenge for the patient, but not too difficult. We can choose to work in a specific quadrants of movement. We can choose to work with a foam or without a foam, increasing the limits or decreasing the limits of the exercise. There's a lot of parameters that you can manipulate to make the exercise fit for the patient. The habituation exercises are the exercises that are a bit of it. So these exercises are designed to reduce the vestibular related symptoms by repeatedly exposing the patient to environments and visual stimulus that we know that are going to provoke those symptoms, such as dizziness and postural imbalance. So the goal is going to be to achieve habituation. And so we want to customize the virtual environments to match the patient's complaint. So we can use the normal optokinetic bars, we can use optokinetic tunnels, we can perform VOR suppression exercises, and we can use different backgrounds, so we can make the exercise more difficult to tolerate if we have a more colorful and more complex background, or less if we use like a more monotonous background. And we can use also videos of real daily life situations that are often linked to these type of symptoms, which are environments with a lot of movement on the visual, on the patient's visual field, with a lot of lights, confusion. There's also sound. So most of these exercises can be performed with virtual reality and also with a monitor. For the VOR suppression and for the 3D videos, you need to have the headset on. Also, you can choose to use the posturography plate here, and at the same time that you are training habituation, you are also recording posturography data to have a way to see the impact of this type of image on the patient balance, and also use it as baseline and to monitor the progress of the patient. All the changes that are performed in terms of changing the velocity of the stimulus, the direction of the stimulus, the location, the going bars, right, left, right, or decreasing, increasing difficulty, changing the direction of the tunnel. We can do this without having the need to close the exercise, choose the parameters and start. So we can do this while the patient is performing the exercises. So we are seeing how the patient is doing, and we can be changing and manipulating these parameters during the exercise itself. Okay. So For the VOR and oculomotor exercise category, so the aim is to improve the function of the vestibular ocular reflex, and so normalizing gaze stability during head movement. So we have an exercise for VOR adaptation where we can select and choose to work in different VOR gains, so we can have the progression, and we can choose different backgrounds to also increase and decrease the difficulty in terms of complex visual images or less complex environments. And we can also change the frequency of the random color and letter change, which going to be increasing or decreasing the cognitive load from the exercise itself. We also, within this category, have exercises to train visual tracking, focus, and coordination between eye and head movements, such as saccadic movements, smooth pursuit, and vergency training. So this is what we show you in this video. Is it just an example of an exercise where we perform saccadic eye movements followed by head movements for eye, head, and neck coordination. So again, this can be performed using the VR or just using the monitor like you see on the video. And the same for the posturography plate. We can be doing this on top of the plate and recording the center of pressure data or without. I think the last year, the cervical proprioception category for exercises include 3 categories of exercises that, of course, are designed to train cervical proprioception using visual biofeedback. So we are going to use the inertial sensor again. Each group is going to include also exercises with different levels of difficulty and to train position sense and movement sense. The patient controls the blue point on the screen, which represents the position of the inertial sensor. It's calibrated at the beginning of each exercise. And we have for the figures and paths different forms of figures and paths to simulate multiplane movements, direction control. The random points, the patient needs to react to the point's position or point's movement as quickly and as accurate as possible. And the visual stimulus is a very, very nice exercise to train sensory integration at the same time as neck movement and position sense. So it's a very, very cool exercise. Besides the exercise menu, we also have a game menu. So the games are, in terms of graphics, are more appealing, but the exercises are more parameterizable, let's say it this way. We have different games, so different games with different levels and different difficulty levels and goals. Now, because science is pointing us towards incorporating cognitive challenges into balance exercise and into any form of rehabilitation, I think. We have developed a game where this is the main focus. So this game is designed as a motor cognitive challenge that aims at training balance, memory coordination, and also impulse inhibition. So the game is based on the classic Simon Says game, and it features 3 distinct modes. So we have the follow the arrow, which the player reacts to direction and color of a rotating arrow. So if the arrow is green, the patient needs to displace their weight and center of pressure towards the color that is pointed, that the arrow is pointing to. If the arrow is red, the patient needs to displace their center of pressure towards the opposite color where the arrow is pointing to. We have the memory mode, which is an expanded version of the original game with progressive challenges such as color rotation and numbers. the player needs to memorize the position of temporarily visible numbers on the buttons, and then needs to press the buttons in the correct order. For the BART game, which some of you already know, we also did some improvements of the game. So now it's very rich in terms of physical challenges. So you can train weight transfers, assuming a unilateral stance, doing squats, or putting weight on the heels, and doing heel raises to make the characters jump in different scenarios, and also with the option to choose between different characters. So this is something that is also important for increasing the engagement of the patient. So the gamification part of the rehabilitation. We are almost at the finishing line in developing the Ed Flight, which is a game where the patient controls and pilots an airplane in virtual, so with the virtual reality headset, and needs to collect and validate the correct balls with after an order for collecting the green ball or the blue ball, and so it's going to be also very specific for vestibular rehabilitation. Okay, so this is the Autoneuro system in a nutshell. I can summarize it into 3 key points. So we have the aspect that is all-in-one system that eliminates the need of having multiple devices and systems working separately, which can help in the normal clinical flow, so optimize the clinical flow. And also because we use technology, we can be collecting objective data, so having more precision on our assessment, and then on targeting the right the right aspects. It covers important aspects of balance control for vestibular in this vestibular context care. So it addresses postural control, vestibular ocular reflex, visual-vestibular integration, cervical proprioception, and also the symptom profiling and the impact of the symptoms on the patient's daily life with the DHY. And we use this for both assessment and then the same logic of categories for the intervention, making it easier to go from the assessment to the intervention. And at the end, we want to develop things to be easy to use, user-friendly in terms of clinical use, but also to be able to be part of the scientific field of new studies. And so it's also possible to export raw data from the system, so you can also use it in research, and so for universities, for research center is also a good tool. So this is it for today. I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you again for being here and taking interest on our work. The Sensing Future team wishes you all a happy holidays to you and your families. And I leave you my email address, because if you have questions, if you want to know more, if you want to give me your feedbacks, feel free to send me an email. You can also, if you want to see more of our content, we have a blog. We have a website that you have access to blogs, to a blog with articles, webinars, ebooks, and scientific papers already published with our devices. And we have our social media that you can also follow to keep up to date to what we are doing. So thank you once again for being here, and I see you next year. Bye.